Well, I have the privilege of introducing Alicia Tillman, who is the Global Chief Marketing Officer at SAP, the world's largest enterprise software company. Alicia is a purpose-driven marketer and believes in leading with empathy and in humanizing brands, a quality in which I admire and has never been more important or needed than today. One of her latest projects manifests all of these elements. Let's take a quick look at a short video. I believe you're supposed to be running the video. Great. So, Alicia, welcome and thank you for joining us on the 100th Brand Innovators live cast.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. My deep thanks to David and Mark for having me today. It's an honor. It's amazing what has transpired since I was on the first one several months ago at the beginning of a pandemic that has changed so much of the way we operate. But it's an honor, and Suze, I'm so happy to have this conversation with you today.
Same here. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, can you tell us a bit more about Passion for Purpose? What was your inspiration to launch the series? Why is it so important to you?
Thank you for that. So we launched our first episode last Wednesday. They come out every Wednesday. I post them on my LinkedIn and my Twitter pages. And look, it's been a really hard year, personally, professionally. Almost every corner of the world has been affected in some way. Yet there is so much good to celebrate as well. If we think about all of the heroes that live amongst us, there are so many, from our frontline workers to those that are working in our restaurants and food services. It's countless. And I take my inspiration so much from so many of those heroes. And when I look across SAP, we're over 100,000 SAP employees strong. And we have employees that not only have their day jobs doing what they do at SAP, but there are those that have also sacrificed their time in their local communities as well. And I wanted to showcase those employees and present them to the world for the heroes that they are, for being able to juggle what they do at SAP, but also how they have worked to take time to give back to their communities as well. And so that's what it's about. It's meant to be a source of inspiration and also a source of hope, and also to give people some thoughts about what they can do in their own communities as well, because oftentimes during periods of crisis, everybody wants to figure out how they can help in some way. And these are meant to showcase, examples and ideas for how people can get out in their communities a bit more as well.
That's great. And so, will this be launching on Twitter, or are there where can we find this weekly?
Yeah, no, great question. So every Wednesday, so tomorrow I launch my second episode, and I launch it on my Twitter handle as well as on my LinkedIn page. So stop by either of those two places to check it out.
Will do. So, Keeping with community and connection, which is a core focus for SAP, typically you're being seen on the main stage, so centered around a massive conference and event strategy. This is an area at OUTFRONT that we've supported with out-of-home advertising, but since in-person events have been canceled, how has that switch to virtual events been beneficial to your customers? And then I'd also just kind of add, do you still feel that there's an impact in this setting, that you can still have an impact?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of in-person events is the human face-to-face
Hmm.
connection that you have.
Hmm.
And, I think it's a fact that there's really nothing that can replace that. But
Correct.
it also serves as a place where you can grow connections. And, certainly if you're in the space that I am in the B2B space, events are a big part of driving business, attracting new customers and progressing leads that you may have in the pipeline, to the next stage of their journey through an events tactic.
Hmm.
And so,
Hmm.
but the one thing about events is if it's in person, you're limited to the
Right.
number of people that can attend. If I look at our
Hmm.
annual conference, which is Sapphire, which takes
Hmm.
place every May or June, we generally attract about 25,000 people in Orlando. Over 70% of the audience comes from North America because
Right.
it's a haul to get
Right.
to Orlando from Europe or certainly in
Hmm.
all parts of Asia. So we
Hmm.
had to completely reimagine it this year, Suze, and
Hmm.
we moved it to a digital event. And what we found was we had an ability to deliver it in the local time zones. We
Hmm.
delivered it in 14 different languages. And we, as a result, were able to have more reach. In fact, those attendees that came from Asia Pacific rivaled those that came from North America this time around.
Wow.
And yeah, and we had well over 100,000 attendees versus the 25,000 that we had in person. And so there are tremendous advantages to digital in terms of
Hmm.
reach and
Hmm.
customizing by local
Hmm.
language that I think provides great benefit for us during this period.
That's great. That must have been a huge undertaking by your team, but certainly it sounds like a great payoff, and more people get to enjoy and feel connected to you and to the business.
Absolutely. And you're right. It was a lot of work. And, hats off to my team. I mean, we made the decision that we needed to cancel all of our events just 8 weeks before our
Right.
largest event. So needing to pivot so quickly to what usually takes 12 months to plan an in-person event and to have only 8 weeks to completely turn this on its head and create an entirely new digital strategy to support it. It's about the people. And, we had a great team within my global marketing organization who truly made it happen.
That sounds great. So, SAP is helping businesses maintain continuity. And so, by staying true to your company mission, which is to help the world run better and improve people's lives, one recent example was on display during the NBA restart. So, can you share a little bit around the work you completed with the NBA Back to Best campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So the NBA and SAP have been partners for many years now. We support the NBA with a lot of their analytics and business
Hmm.
intelligence and
Hmm.
experience management. And if we think about the NBA restart this year, it was really different, as a
Hmm.
lot of sports were. And, we have been on this digital transformation journey with the NBA for quite some time. And we needed to reimagine so many parts of the experience this year.
Hmm.
And so they still needed to collect sentiments from fans related
Hmm.
to digital fan experiences where fans can participate live during games, but in a
Hmm.
digital sort of space versus the in person one that they're used to.
Right.
And so we used SAP technology together with the NBA to adjust those digital experiences that fans had now with the games, to be
Hmm.
able to take on board feedback and help the NBA learn from that so that they could still make sure that the fans were satisfied even if the experience was quite different for them this year. So the more we can put in mechanisms to listen to fans, what they want to see, how we can create digital fan experiences during the games, which I'm sure you probably saw a little bit of during the games this year. So to be able to learn from that and have technology be doing the listening for you quickly so that you can respond game by game to be able to give a new digital experience, which was far different than anything that we had ever experienced in the past.
Totally. And so is there anything you can share? Was there any interesting tidbits that fans had, something they liked about it, something they wish they could change, or anything you can share with that feedback?
Well, I mean, it was very different, right? You know, to experience the game digitally. The one advantage is, you know, where there, you know, we spend a lot of time analyzing and providing all of the statistics for the NBA. So when you're sitting at home, you have the ability to experience stats and learn about the game more deeply than if you're sitting there live, you know, in an arena. There's limitations about what you have access to and what you can see. And so, you know, I think what we learned more than anything is that the digital experience is one that, you know, may not be the only experience that exists, but it's going to become a very big experience when it comes to sporting events and when we'll be able to get back in person. You know, there's still not a timeline that exists around that. And so learning how to further evolve that experience so that we can make it feel just as fun and just as comfortable. I think that's what fans want to see. But I think there was also, you know, a lot of, you know, an expectation that this was new for everyone. And the more we could put fans feeling like they were there in the game, even if they're not, then the more appreciative they are of still being able to have sports in a year that was challenged in many ways.
Completely. And I think just getting used to that this could be how it is for even next season. So if there's learnings that you could take for it, but you know, ultimately fans still get to watch their sport and be involved just in a different way.
Absolutely.
So another area that I think is really interesting is humanizing brands. And so you had written in an article that a challenge CMOs often face is to bridge the needs of the customer versus the needs of the business. And so SAP has stated that the future of business has feelings and businesses need to be empathetic. So I think your vision here is ahead of the curve because this, I believe, was written back about 2019, so pre-pandemic. Can you explain the idea a bit and tell us how it's evolved even further over the last few months?
Absolutely. So there's just one clear thing that we have to keep in mind. At the end of the day, we are marketing to humans. These may be humans who wear a variety of job titles in their professional lives. But more and more, these executives that make buying decisions for their companies are making decisions both emotionally as well as what is going to best be able to support the goals that they're acting on behalf of their companies. And so we have to, as brands, connect emotionally with the audiences that are there to buy our products and services. You know, because buying into a brand today is as much about buying into a community as it is about buying into a product or a capability. And that matters. It matters how the brand is investing for good and has a strong purpose or has a viewpoint on certain things that are important to consumers or as humans, I should say. So we have to really think about, as brands, how do we connect emotionally? How do we speak to the value we provide, not only on the product level in terms of the products and services that we deliver, but how are we a company of values? And how are we a company that's doing good and giving back and changing things in society or the economy or the environment? Because these are things that we as human beings care about, regardless of the professional hats that we wear day in and day out. And so, you know, I talked about how the future of business has feelings because businesses, corporations, aren't historically thought of as being human or emotional. and are often blamed for a lot of the problems that we have in the world.
Right.
But the world is changing, and consumers demand a lot more out of the brands that they're putting their money into. And making sure that we are connecting emotionally and responding to the values that our consumers expect of us is a big imperative for brands. And I believe will certainly be the brands that win, certainly once we come out of this pandemic. Those that focus on values and connecting emotionally, those will be the brands that win, because that's what our consumers expect today.
Yeah, that's great. We often say at Outfront, think like a consumer, but I really like the thought of think like a human. And especially during this time, there's been a lot of articles about feeling more connected to brands that are doing good and are being a part of the community, and kind of not shying away from some of the conversations that are happening in today's environment. And so that connection makes you feel more connected to the brand and to the products. Another great example of how SAP has responded is to the social injustice movement. So by taking concrete steps as a business towards social justice and advancing quality, SAP launched a program leveraging your platform to spotlight Black-owned businesses. Can you tell us a little bit more about this campaign?
Yeah, I mean, look, 2020 has been a very, very challenging year. We have a global pandemic, and we have many issues around racial and social injustice. And people have become very comfortable with their voices over the past few years. But this year has proven that people don't want just an agreement with these issues and the fact that we need to solve them. They want to see action. And more often than not, if there is a belief that in some ways governments have failed people, then people are beginning to turn to the private sector for answers or action in terms of how we're going to solve things such as racial and social injustice, or things like gender or racial inequality. And so what we did here at SAP was I took a portion of my advertising budget for this year, and I dedicated it to promoting small Black-owned businesses, which have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And so we went out to our SAP employee community, and we asked them to put forward businesses in their local communities that are small businesses, Black-owned businesses, that have been suffering as a result of this pandemic. We had hundreds of nominations that came through from our SAP community. And I took a portion of my advertising spend and I invested it in these businesses in their local communities to bring attention to their businesses and help them market their products and services. And then I also took these businesses and I used the SAP channels, our LinkedIn channels, our Instagram channels, our Facebook channels, to promote these businesses underneath the SAP tagline as well, to really give the power of SAP, the scale that we have, the depth that we have, and put it behind helping these businesses, because we need action. And as a large global company, I believe we have a responsibility to help those that are underserved or who have been impacted through the crisis, like small Black-owned businesses have. And so we're proud of that because it's an example of action, not just saying that we want to help and we believe in certain things that need to change, but how do we take our resources and how do we put them to actually helping and changing some of the challenges that these businesses have faced during this pandemic.
I mean, that's fantastic. And I'm sure you received an incredible amount of support and, feedback from these businesses and the appreciation that they have for you to leverage your marketing dollars, your platform to help them out. So that's really making a difference, in someone's lives on a personal and on a human level.
Thank you.
That's great. So we really do admire everything SAP has been doing. And in fact, our purpose at OUTFRONT has been and is to helping people, places, and businesses grow stronger. So we've been leveraging our assets to support small businesses with a community focus. We've been doing this throughout the pandemic, and we continue to do that, as well as support social causes. So it's something that our team and our marketing and our executive team is really also incredibly supportive of and proud to be able to use our assets in that way. So
we do that well. I mean,
mm-hmm.
OUTFRONT is a great example of
Mm-hmm.
a company like SAP that recognizes their responsibility to using their assets to help lead change, and change that us as human beings want to see, so that we can have a more prosperous community and success in our business and our personal lives. So I commend you and your brand,
Thank you.
because you've done such an excellent job at that.
You have just made my CMO, Jody Sinisi, very happy. So thank you for saying
honestly,
that.
It's truly great work that's recognized, and this is what consumers want, and
Correct.
you understand that. It is about listening. It's about having feelings. It's about really having that empathy to truly listen to your customers and take action in ways that they want to see brands take action. So congratulations to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. So we've got a few more minutes, but now if we wanted to break out your crystal ball and talk about predictions, knowing that life as we knew it will not drastically change come January 1st. So I think we all need to really, digest that. What would your predictions be for 2021? So not just business, but back on a human level.
Yeah. So I would continue with the same narrative that we've been speaking about here today. 2020 has absolutely accelerated the need for businesses to have a voice and take action on social issues, issues that people truly care about across our economy, the environment, our communities, society. Because all of these things in some form or another affect us as employees, affect us in our personal lives, and all of us want to leave the world at some point, in a really good place for our children and grandchildren. Right. And we have to work really hard at that. And I think we're going to continue to see more brands not only taking a stand, because I don't think it's necessarily about that. I think it's more about contributing to action and really creating a more diverse and an inclusive world, taking your resources and investing them where they truly matter and can make a difference to make societal, economic, and environmental change. Because this is what consumers want, and this is what consumers say. These are the brands I'm going to invest in, not just brands that have the products and services that I need for my life or for the role that I serve in my company. But I know that this is a brand that has values that are aligned to mine, and they're taking their resources and they're investing them to a higher purpose. That's number one. In the same vein, I believe that businesses will continue to want to listen more to their employees to make sure that they can be as productive and as successful as possible. And they're going to listen more to their customers. There's so much choice in the world today. And they want to make sure that when they attract customers once, they're going to be able to keep their customers for life. And so listening and building an operation that's going to be able to attract customers, attract employees to want to work at your brand, and create an environment that's based on their needs and their values and what they need to be able to be successful in being a part of your brand community. Humanizing brands, really recognizing that and leading with empathy. And I think that that's the second thing that we're going to see continue to ramp up. And, look, we've been calling on this for so long. And I think if we can all work together as brands, then our communities will prosper. And then ultimately, we will collectively help the world become a better place.
That's great. Thank you. So we are going to go to Q&A. We've got about 5 minutes left. And so we've have two questions here. Do you have a professional mentor early on in your career? Did you have a professional mentor early on in your career? And how did that relationship impact your journey?
Well, I would say I've had a lot of mentors. I mean, everything from my mom and my husband to, professional mentors from, former bosses that I've worked with
Hmm.
to peers and even those that have worked for me. Every person I interact with, I take a learning from. We can all say that we've had great bosses and we can say we've had
Hmm.
not so great bosses. And with both, you learn a ton from,
Hmm.
and you also learn a lot about yourself too. So I would say two things. Um, Ask often for feedback. Ask it from your family, from those who know you, those who may only have interacted with you a little bit. Always ask for feedback because I think it's important learning experience. And then second, make sure you understand the difference between a sponsor and a mentor. A mentor is going to be
Mm.
there to give you advice and be there as a sounding board to help you through your daily interactions and experiences you have. A sponsor is someone who knows you quite well and is advocating for your success and is in a
Hmm.
position to be able to help you get to your next opportunity. I have had both. They're both different and similar in some
Hmm.
ways, but both are equally important in your career journey. And so
Certainly.
make sure you have both and know the difference between both of them.
I love that because I do think you can learn a lot from some of your not so favorite bosses. And even as a leader,
Definitely.
you can take that with you as to how you want to lead and how you want to manage, a team or people, and really what, it can be personal in that way. So,
Definitely.
another question we have is many brands have drastically reduced media budgets over the past few months. How has your media plan adjusted? If your budget has been reduced, have you gotten more creative and efficient with your strategies?
So I will tell you, yes, we reduced our spend this year, and yes, we reprioritized where we were going to put our remaining spend.
Hmm.
Every business within SAP had to give back in some way.
Hmm.
We needed to reduce costs to preserve some of the challenges that we experienced in the early part of the year. And I think in during this period, I really needed to act as in the most decisive manner that I've ever truly had to operate. And I prioritized a couple of things. Number one, I focused first on what our story needed to be. We
Hmm.
have a series of products that support every C-level executive's technology needs in a company.
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
first needed to understand what was most needed during this pandemic, because not every product is going to need to be a priority. But, we have e-commerce applications, we have supply chain technology, we have travel technology and tools.
Right.
Those were some of the categories that proved to be most needed during the pandemic. So we told our story around those products, but we made sure that we told it in a way that showed that we were here to help. And one of the ways in which we
Mm.
did it is we opened up a lot of those products for free. And
Right.
in a lot of cases today, we're still offering for free a lot of these products and services. We needed to be able to help. We needed to focus most where our products and services were needed during this period. And we need to put everything else aside. And that's what taking swift, decisive action is about: knowing truly what's happening in the marketplace, knowing the effect that it's having on your customers, knowing where your brand can help, and only focus on telling that story. And so we prioritize digital channels because that's where everybody was. More than anything else, that's where the majority of our investment went this year. And we focused
Right.
on digital investments and then shifting a story to be a story of empathy and a story of relevance around how the SAP brand could help.
So one follow-up question to that, do you foresee a continuation of that in 2021, or do you foresee any changes happening there? Or it's really, if I was in your seat, I would think it's can change quite, we don't know what's going to happen sort of, day to day, week to week.
Yeah, I would say that so I do see continued change, but I
Hmm.
think we are getting out ahead of it as much as we possibly can right now. We
Right.
have done a tremendous amount of research about what getting back to business looks like. And most people, have said that until there is widespread access to a vaccine, our world is going to be a very different place when it comes to traveling, attending large scale events, or anything that requires in-person interaction. And so for the first half of next year, we have already decided we're going to move all of our events once again to a digital environment. So we are investing in the digital capabilities to make sure that we have the most sophisticated platform to be able to deliver great experiences coming off of a year where there's a lot of fatigue. And we've got to reimagine, what those experiences in the digital space looks like. So that's going to be a changed investment, yet continuously building from what we already started this year. How we invest in media, I do think that that's going to be a continued focus on where we prioritize versus where we deprioritize, because we once again want to be as cost efficient as possible. Sadly, as we know, Suze, I mean, there's still no timeline for this pandemic. No. It's amazing that we are well into 7 months. I don't think any of us expected to be here on the 100th episode, still talking about being in
a milestone. We didn't know to celebrate.
Yeah, and to think that still through the first half of next year, is that a prediction that we're still going to be in this? Absolutely. Do we need to adjust our businesses right now as a result of that? Absolutely. We are silly to think that we are going to get back to 2019 by January, February, or even March for that matter. And being able to think as efficiently, effectively as possible with our spend and where we're spending that money and what channels are going to be of the most use to us. This is where we as a team have been heads down continuously and tirelessly, over the past several weeks to prepare for 2021, because it's a reality. And I think we will be as prepared and as effective as possible if we start working on the plan right now. And that's what we're doing.
That's great. So I think this will probably be one last question. So how has your leadership style evolved over the last 6 months?
Well, I will tell you this. I sent out a letter to my team last Friday, reflecting on the past 7 months. When we first came into this pandemic, I remember it clearly. I work full-time in New York City, and I was coming home from work one evening. It was a chilly March evening, taking the bus home, and never knew at that time that it was going to be over 30 weeks sitting here since I had been back to New York City. And during this period, I committed that every single week you will hear from me in some form or another. I said this to all of my global marketers, and I have a team of a little less than 2,000 marketers that sit across 180 countries. And I said, you will hear from me. I will not necessarily bring you answers every week, but I know having that contact with the leader of your organization every week, just as a source of comfort, of hope, of answers to the extent that I have them, but also clarity in terms of what I need my teams to be focused on. I committed that every week they would hear from me. And so they got a letter, they got a video, they got a TikTok video from my family and I, which is really fun. And I found myself, I will say, my style of communicating had evolved. I dedicated an entire letter to talking about my summer vacation. And, the purpose of it was to demonstrate the focus on family during this period and how every crisis in life has a silver lining. And if there is any silver lining to this period, it's how much closer we've been able to get with our families and our communities. I mean, I'm typically on a plane 4 to 5 times a month. I haven't been on an airplane since February. And I have found myself communicating about that. And it's helped. People are dealing with mental health and wellness issues, and knowing that, I have had trouble, with focusing some days and appreciating the power of family and taking that vacation, because we all need to get away in some way, even if we're not really going very far or traveling on airplanes. And so that's my communication has changed in the sense where I am absolutely speaking more personally to my teams versus it always being about our goals and our progress against goals and the business performance. Sure, that's in there. But we've also had such a convergence of our professional and our personal lives during this period. And it's hard to avoid, and nor do I want to, because that's what life has been about in 2020. And so it's really taken shape in the communications that I've sent to my team as a result. And I will tell you, my team has loved the way that I've communicated, because they feel closer to us as colleagues than they ever have been before as well. And that's the inspiration that I feel that we all need to be able to have that energy every day to continue to do the things that we're doing on behalf of our companies.
That is fantastic. I think what you just said, it's brought the human element to you. And so you've become more accessible and attainable. And even just to get to know you and feel more connected to you makes any employer want to work harder and want to do better. So that is fantastic and great to hear. And so I think that's our time. I wanted to really just say thank you, Alicia. It has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you to Brand Innovators for this time.
Thank you, Suze. It's been awesome. It's been so great talking with you. Thank you.
You too. You're welcome. You too.
Thank you guys both so much, Alicia and Suze. This was fantastic. What an amazing way to kick off our 100th live.